And welcome everybody. It is Monday, July 22nd, and so we're on the week 7 Q&A, and a lot of info last week, huh?
Yep.
I get absent-minded, but you know, I give you a lot to do. So everybody should be well at work. Any questions on final projects, or have I done an okay job in making that clear?
Okay, so far.
Okay.
Got a little interesting case study for you, though.
Oh, yeah.
I've got a potential client looking for 400 tons of organic grapes. And it sounds, actually, they already have some marketing out on the internet for one of the organic wines. And they also have a potential deal with a retailer. And we're getting real close to crush right now, and I've got all the dogs out sniffing, and so do other people, and they're going to have a tough time finding enough grapes to produce the wines that they already seemingly are marketing.
Yeah, you know, this is that's terrific, because it you know, I really want everyone to be of the mindset supply chain, right? Value chain. So 400 tons, can anybody do the quick math?
18 truckloads.
What's that?
18 bulk truckloads.
And how many cases of wine if you were to use a standard conversion factor from the cost of goods calculator?
I'd have to open it up.
There you go. Let me see if I can.
I'm not that mentally fit.
All right. How many? What's the sort of the most widely circulated number of how many cases from a ton of grapes?
60. Is that right?
Yep. And so you're looking at roughly, you know, in the range of about 24,000 cases of wine, right? And so this is really a great opportunity. That's a good amount of fruit. And is it one specific variety, or is it going in with a blend?
Just the big boys: Chardonnay, Pinot, and Cabernet.
Okay, so they're doing in 400 tons of each, or
450 tons altogether. They're looking for basically 6 loads of each one.
6 loads of each. So
which
150 tons of each.
150 tons of each.
All right. So, and now you can think, okay, so now we've actually got a portfolio of products, right? So you're coming up with the line of wines. It's a specific client, so it basically has to somehow get distributed. In some states it'll be easier than other, but I'm guessing, is it a national chain?
That I do not know, but I would. No, I couldn't guess that either way. I mean, I guess it's possible it's a national chain and they're going to test market it, you know, in a certain area or something, but it's hard to tell.
In one of the ways, in this gets to kind of a deductive process, and I'm actually going to be speaking on this day after tomorrow at this bulk wine show, and I'll be on time Wednesday for our class from the bulk wine show, God and the internet gremlins willing. So if this were a more mature project, if they actually knew, they probably wouldn't order equal quantities of each, because they would have a better idea how much Cabernet versus how much Pinot versus how much Chardonnay.
Yep.
And I'm guessing they're just looking for California AVA.
Correct.
All right, so you can source it anywhere from there.
Actually, they've got it stipulated from some different areas, but they definitely, some of it's more to the quality side from better AVAs, and some of it's more to the value side.
Right. Yeah. So that and only share as much as you're comfortable with sharing. But if they given you a target price per ton?
They're basically working off of last year's crush report.
So in California average, I guess, or more average from the,
depending on which average or
which AVA.
They'll work off of that AVA, and they're actually pretty flexible with regard to the AVA. You know, whatever you bring to them an offer, then they'll evaluate it based on what AVA it is, what the price is,
right,
so on and so forth.
And then know that this is really great because it's a contract purchase. They've obviously got the resources or the means to have it crushed and fermented, which might be any combination of things. And if I were doing it, I would be sourcing specifically for the Pinot Noir from Monterey County, from Santa Barbara, more the coastal kind of a thing. If I'm looking for the Cabernet, probably Lodi to Amador County, Sierra foothills kind of stuff, and whatever. And so then you're working on a great broker, right? And are you guys the broker for this deal, or are they just farming it out to whoever can perform?
Right now, they're just looking for somebody that can find everything that that they need. We've got contracted growers that we work with all over the state, so we won't broker it. We already have contracts on a lot of, or with a lot of the growers that may end up providing the grapes. So we would just we would purchase the grapes ourselves and then resell them.
And resell them with your profit, but and then you'd be responsible for delivery and all that kind of stuff, and assume. So you'd quote them. You would find the source. You would then quote them your price, and I'm guessing your price would be delivered to whatever location of the facility.
In this case, they requested that we deliver them. Sometimes they do request roadside, and then the grower just fills up their own bins.
Right.
You know, whatever.
And and for the class to know in this kind of scenario, then they're probably going, I guess, to Allied Grape Growers and to some of the other big companies to kind of see who can find it and get the best price from the most desirable AVAs. And so there's this whole transactional that, and this is why Agajanian and these, you've got a mark, you are a brand, and you've got your customers for these transactions. So this really brings home this idea of, you know, marketing is not just a wine and a product, it's every point along the supply chain. And then it all fits into the value chain because they're looking at a consumer proposition of organic. So they feel they've got this, and I think I probably know who the client is.
Yeah, you may from previous conversation. But.
And well, actually, I don't think from our conversations, but just from something that I know that's going on that actually could be disruptive in the entire grocery realm in the United States. And so let's see, I want to be careful about this. I don't think you've disclosed anything to me about this, but let's just sort of take this as an aside. Who has the number of outlets to be able to take this kind of quantity as a starter order, right, to get into distribution and get out to their stores that has that kind of value proposition, and then all of a sudden you can start to envision or speculate about what kind of a company would be doing that. And this isn't speculation or whatever, but has anybody ever heard of the company Aldi? ALDI?
Oh yeah,
Right.
former customer.
Yep. And Aldi is making disruptive waves as a challenge to Walmart and to grocery chains and to so forth because of their systems and logistics of what they do and the products they sell. So this would be the kind of request that you might see from Aldi, from Whole Foods, from Trader Joe's or whatever, where you've got a consumer orientation that places a premium on organic. That makes sense?
Mm-hmm.
And so then, and I just got done with a wine competition that was really fascinating. I actually helped organize the whole event and everything else. But we were judging wines, you know, the standard way with points and whatever, with panels, and in a blind tasting, and we were assigning a numerical value for quality, a numerical value for value. So, you know, if a wine was, you know, a good standard quality and 85 points, but it sells for $40 or $50 a bottle, what's that price quality ratio? And then after we registered our blind tasting evaluation, then we evaluated the packaging. And that's really hard. And that's actually why everything took longer today, because we're kind of trained what to look for, and there were, I don't know, 6 or 7 masters of wine. It's not a huge, you know, competition or whatever, but it was a lot of people, highly qualified. And then it comes to a package, and you get something with a fox and a chicken and some cockamamie story, and they don't even tell you what the hell kind of wine it is. And it sells for $30. You know, how do you evaluate a cartoon and no communication on the label? And there was one wine in particular that was saying organic, and in big letters it said no sulfites, and then in the same size and color font it said red blend. But I swear when we looked at it, the only word we could see was sulfites. And you almost didn't notice it said no sulfites. It was like the thing that dominated the whole label wasn't the organic, it wasn't the producer, it wasn't that it was a red blend, but the word that just shot out was sulfites. And it's like, Jesus, you know.
Oh, its aging potential wasn't very good either, I take it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, so it was just like, what are they trying to do? And so there were just so many wines that would just stand on a shelf. There was this one really beautiful, complex, reflective, kind of metallic shit that scuffs. And when it scuffs, the metallic behind the whatever mat shows through, so it just looks messy as hell. And when you look at it, if you actually put it like it would be on a shelf, you can't even see it really, because it's just sort of it has glare and whatever. So here's a company that's got the distribution, it's got the point of sale, it's looking for a wine to be made by spec, and now it needs organic grapes. And I'm thinking now's a way better time than it would have been 3 or 4 years ago to find it also, because things are flattening out and acreage is up and so forth. So,
Yeah.
so it might be a little bit opportunity, but this is the reality of so much of the wine business. It's not just another high end, high oak, high extract, expensive Cabernet or whatever. So that's kind of cool. Yeah, so it sounds like you guys got your work cut out for you.
Yep.
There you go.
Do what we can do.
Yeah. So can you start, for all of you, can start to piece together now the supply chain, what has to happen? You know, they've got to work within certain price parameters, so they've got to be able to then find the broker who can source all these things. They may grow it themselves, or they may have to reach out to put this together. And then all the way to the value proposition of the consumer, which is people who care about organics that would be shopping wherever this is, et cetera, et cetera.
There's another little thing to think about is right now it seems that they have more and more and more people out looking for the same grapes, which can kind of create
A speculative market.
Situation where they start to think that there's more demand than there is. Disney World. He went and started buying up land in Orlando very quietly so that he could build Disney World.
Oh, that's a great story, isn't it?
And in this case, everybody and their brother now is out looking for these grapes, and it could cause kind of an artificial issue for them on their pricing in the end.
Yes, and it creates in a way a false sense of more demand than there might be.
Yep.
And so, and by the way, this happens at retail, and then this rolls over into excess inventories and selling off bulk wine and everything else. When I was a retailer, there seemed to be this huge demand for Schramsberg in the Atlanta market. And everybody was just begging for Schramsberg, and finally Jack and Jamie Davies, the founders, came into the market, and they brought the wine in. And it turned out there was literally like a handful of people that went to every store. Can you get it? Can you get it? So every store thought they had these buyers for it. And they're saying, you know, we'll take a case or several cases and whatever. So when it finally came in, everybody's fighting to get as much as they could. But then it was the same buyers asking at all the same stores. And it was kind of a mess for a while until it balanced out. Yeah. So the supply and demand, what do consumers really want? How many of the consumers are there? And this is what Rich is alluding to. Even one large buyer going out to a lot of sources for the grape, saying, you know, we really need this, we can get this quantity. And this can even stimulate new plantings or budding over to different varieties.
Yeah. You know what? There's a very good converse to that as well. And I know you're fond of sending out the list of available grapes and bulk wine. And if one were to look carefully at all those different lists, there's a lot of repetition in them. Because one winery, for instance, will put their excess bulk wine out to us, to Agajanian, to Ciati, to Turrentine. Sometimes they'll also put it on Wine Business and Grape Connect and whoever knows how many other sites. So there can also be a huge inflation inflating appearance of the available bulk wine or grapes on the market as well, because one supplier is putting it out in so many different places.
Yeah. Any questions about this? This fun stuff for me. I hope everybody else is getting stuff out of this conversation. Any questions? Comments? I ran into a new one today. So we're tasked with judging wine labels. And one of the wines on our form was a red blend of Rhone varieties that the producer or the cellared and bottled by of record, right? Meaning that they bought probably bulk wine, but then they blended it on their licensed premises and bottled it. And it was Rhone varieties, Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre. And they filled it out that it was from Alsace region of France, where none of those grapes are allowed to be grown and carry but it said Alsace AOC. But either somebody transferred the information wrong, or somebody's a dipshit and doesn't know what they're doing. And we tasted the wine, and it was kind of, it was purpose built for points. Really inky, really oaky, really extracted. So it wasn't even like an expression of the varieties.
Mm-hmm.
And then we got to see the label. And you ready for this? Cellared or produced and bottled in Hopland, California. French wine. And then it had on the label Meritage Red Blend. Somebody's got some background. I think Rich. Oh, I'm going to mute you and unmute you when we need, okay?
Sure.
I don't know. No, it's not.
Might be my cooling system.
I was just going to say it sounds like air blowing, but it's coming through.
Hold on.
No, I think we're okay. So did anybody know the background on Meritage? These are the kind of things that can be important to look up and to learn for a lot of reasons.
Isn't that something they did in California because of they couldn't call it a Bordeaux blend?
Well, what happened was it used to be to qualify to label the wine by the name of the grape variety, thus a varietal wine, only required 51% of that variety to actually be in the wine.
Mm-hmm.
And in the early 90s, there was a campaign, there was a lot of politics in it. And so the legal minimum went from 51 to 75%. This meant that a lot of high-end wines, including things like Phelps Insignia and some of the Beringer Knights Valley wines, could no longer be called Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot or whatever, even though they were kind of classic blends dominated by a grape variety. So I was on the steering committee. I was a representative from Beringer to the initial steering committee. And so the idea was we were going to find a protectable, trademarkable name, a brand, all right, something that could be branded and protected form a nonprofit association that then wineries could join the association and had to meet strict criteria that it needed to be, it could be up to 90% of a single variety and the rest a blend, but they had to be the approved grape varieties from Bordeaux, right? And that would give a new marketing. So again, brand marketing, who cares? And there was a national contest. Somebody came up and mashed up merit and heritage, so it's actually pronounced meritage, not meritage. And it's the Meritage Association, and you have to actually license the name under membership and strictly conform to these. So here's this wine that's a French table wine that got registered in this event as an Alsace Appellation Contrôlée, which it clearly isn't and can be. It's a French bulk wine sent to Hopland, California, and it says Meritage blend, red blend on it, and it's illegal use of the trademark, completely illegal. Not the right grape varieties, doesn't show the trademark, etc.
Now, how would they even get that by the TTB for a label?
I don't know. We were asking that too. But since it is an industry governed and created organization, we don't think it's, and this is the kind of, that's exactly the question that we wondered. How does it pass compliance? Well, compliance doesn't cover trademark infringements and so.
No, but what about the Alsace portion of it?
Well, the Alsatian part was just some idiot filling out a form.
Yeah, but it's still a label violation, is it not?
It's not on the label. It was on the form when they submitted the wine.
Okay.
And it was it's a wine by Kevin O'Leary.
Oh, really?
and for those the Shark Tank guy, who is the one who wants to sue everybody. You got to be careful with this shit, because here you've got this litigious, shark, who's just a wine elitist, the kind of the classic snob, and everybody makes fun of him on Shark Tank for that, right? Yep. And here's this French wine sent in bulk to Hopland, bottled, cellared and bottled, and illegally using the Meritage trademark.
I think he's from Canada too. I wonder why they wouldn't just ship it to Canada. I can't understand logistically how they would bring it to California.
I'm not sure if it was an episode or something, but it was some sort of investment in leveraging name and influence and so forth. And so, in effect, one of the interesting things about that label is leveraging the brand Kevin O'Leary, right? Because that's what people recognize, and he's the shark and he's the wine expert. It's got to be good, right? And the wine was terrific. We had no problem with the wine. They did an excellent job on that. But boy, that label was just what the hell are they doing? Kind of crazy. So that then brings us to what I was talking about last week, and in the final frontier, like who really are consumers? What do we think consumers want, and what do they really want? And sometimes we're making wines to satisfy the critics and the experts in the competitions, but is that really consistent with what the consumers really want? And so the best example is fruit wines, Moscato, uh, sweet rosé, including blush wine, and so forth. Can a trained expert who is trained to hate these kind of wines effectively judge those wines or evaluate them for the market that they're intended based on what we're trained to like and dislike and the way we think about wines? What do y'all think?
Come on, somebody else speak up.
Come on, Karen, Paul, you there? Well, we've got a caller. I heard activity.
I would say no.
I would say no also. Anybody ever have elderberries?
No.
Anybody ever hear of elderberry wine?
I've heard of the wine.
Nope.
I haven't tried it personally.
I've got to look this up because this is a piece of trivia as old as I am, and I'm not sure it's even still on the records, but these kind of laws tend to kind of persist over time. In Portugal, in the region of Oporto, where true port wines come from, and especially the famous fortified great port wines of Croft and Quinta do Noval and Taylor Fladgate and so forth. It used to be, and I'm going to guess it still is, but we would need to do a fact check on this to make sure, that I believe the distance was 100 meters. You could not have elderberry bushes within 100 meters of a vineyard. And it's because elderberries have this incredibly inky, dark juice that's high in acidity and actual structure of bitterness and tannin. And it can be used to color a wine that's deficient in color and acidity. We had 2 elderberry wines today because, being the nut job I am, they decide, oh, give that shit to Tim. And so we had a dry elderberry, we had a sweet elderberry, we had a cranberry raspberry blend, we had a blackberry wine, and we had a Marionberry, which is some weird permutation of, I'm still not really clear, but it's a thing in Oregon and Washington State. And it's I guess it's technically a cross between blackberry and raspberry, and it has something to do with a pollination thing. So, but it's pretty much like a blackberry. And if these wines taste like the fruit and smell like the fruit and whatever, I love them. And I think they've got a great market. But with one exception of these wines, they were trying to make these fruit wines complex and appeal to grape wine lovers, to Cabernet drinkers. So anybody have an idea of why that kind of misses at both ends? I mean, if you're drinking fruit wine, you're probably drinking them because they're sweet and because they smell and taste like they're fruit. And there are some really, to me, just terrific and delicious things like that. And these things were just pretty much disgusting. And not disgusting because of the normal standards that would apply to a fruit wine if you like, traditional grape wines, but because they wouldn't appeal to the people who like fruit wine because they were complex, meaning just funky and weird shit. And they wouldn't, I don't know of many Cabernet or Zinfandel or Pinot or even Moscato drinkers who would even want to try a fruit wine in the first place. So, so it's kind of like, how badly do you miss, both markets?
Yeah, you might.
Yeah, and I really do. I mean, I really sell. Last year we had this amazing spectrum of even fruit wine cocktails, lime daiquiri, coconut, weird. And they were blue and fluorescent green and all this. And we actually found a lot of wines in the wine cocktail and fruit wine category last year that we loved. And this year it was just kind of nada.
I notice in my prospecting that there's a lot of winery websites, and it's typically in the Midwest and back east that have cocktail recipes on their websites for their wines and stuff like that.
And by the way, this is a tradition from Europe. This is not some new wave Americans drink Coca-Cola kind of crap. If you look in old text, you will find absolutely, the French would, anything that would ferment safely and not kill you, they would ferment and consume. and you name it, and that was every kind of flower and herb and whatever. They would infuse things, they would sweeten things with juice, they would do all sorts of cockamamie stuff. But now we're so sophisticated that that's totally off limits. And so it's kind of interesting how we've evolved to a place where the wines are nothing like they used to be in Europe, even the European wines. We've totally misconstrued what the history and traditions were. And we did a flight of bargain Cabernet, and it was a fabulous exercise in who knew how to use oak chips or adjuncts and mega purple, and who didn't know how to use it. And it was really funny when you're with people who know the technical and know the telltale signs of these things, and that if it's a $7 Cabernet Sauvignon that's over oaked, they didn't do it with barrels. I can guarantee you. Yeah. That's just not going to go. And if you've got an $8 Tempranillo that is inky and saturated, they're not doing that with Central California fruit. It's not going to have that color. It's not going to have that character. It's going to need some support. And some people made just kick-ass wines that are really great values, and others were just meh. Somebody really needs to go back to winemaking 101 and learn how to use these tools, right? So there you go. So today was an exercise in evaluation where you could actually kind of taste a wine, know what category, think supply chain, think of value chain. What are they doing, to get this characteristic, and how do they go about it? And then we also got to see how well do they convey a message? What's their label representing? And sometimes it's obvious they're selling to people that are on LSD or other hallucinogens. Sometimes it seems like they're selling to kids, and what's really fascinating to me is, here's this wine that you rated blind, and it's actually really, really good. And then you get some cockamamie cartoonish label that says nothing about, really, you can't even decipher. Literally, there were labels that you would look at, that you would put on the shelf, and you couldn't tell what kind of wine was in the bottle, unless it was a clear bottle with rosé in it or something like that. So it's like, what do they think happens when people are purchasing wine, or even showing it? Maybe they even bought it at the winery or the wine club, and What is it telling you? So there you go.
Mm-hmm.
So see if you, for the next couple weeks and maybe the rest of your life, go through this process when you're tasting wine. Learn whatever you need to do in the descriptive language and the hint of cocoa and the touch of this and this and that. That's all fine. But see if you can actually start to technically deconstruct a wine to say, okay, this is from California and it's this variety at this price and it's got these characteristics. Is this something where they really, really leveraged things like the Purple 8000, the Mega Purple, how did they get that oak characteristic in there? Did they do a good job with the fermentation? Does it smell correct and clean and fresh and this and that? What's the price? Does it represent a value within that category? And then have they been able to package it in a way that's not just standing out because it's bizarre? And we had one wine that we just loved the hell out of the wine, and it was, the name of it was like Conflicted or something like that, and it had a pair of handcuffs. And we had Lunatic. So it was Lunatic Red Blend, pair of handcuffs, and the stuff was dynamite, and we thought the label was terrific for what the wine was. It wouldn't appeal to the tradition. It wouldn't appeal to people in my generation that much, but certain people like myself would like to say, oh, I got a bottle of Lunatic, let's try it. So how does that all work? How does it get through the system? How does it get into the hands of the consumers? Now, Wednesday, I'm going to be at the Bulk Wine Show, and we're just going to kind of continue this conversation. I would love to hear from anybody. Email me any questions if you can't be on the call, and love to hear more from you. And Rich, thanks again. You're actually that grape project brought up a lot of really good stuff, I hope, for everybody. So
oh, you're welcome.
I appreciate having you.
Stop by our booth while we're there.
Yeah, I will. I'll go say hi to the team.
I won't be there, but say hello to the team.
I will be glad to. All right, everybody. That'll be it for today. Thank you all so much. And we'll talk on Wednesday, and then we'll decide on whether there will be a Monday class or not. If we start running out of questions, I start running out of things to say, and you should be working on your projects. And anywhere at any point of this course we can cover, just let me know, and we can have more conversation about it. Okay?
Have a good evening.
Thanks so much.
Good night, guys.
And thanks, Paul, for hey, be on the call. See you guys.
No problem.
All right. Cheers. Bye, everybody.